This podcast, The Good, the Bad and the Vagina, is brought to you by me, Tess Lovely, a retired midwife, birth keeper, mother and sovereign woman. The views shared are my own and those of my guests. If something doesn't resonate, release it. It's not meant to upset or offend. If you feel discomfort, please seek support for your own healing. If you don't like what you hear, don't listen. This space honours truth, freedom and expression, protected under the rights to free speech. Welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Vagina. Let's get started. Hello, how are we, Claire?
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
Good. Welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Vagina. I'm so excited about having you on here tonight. We don't know a huge amount about each other. We met briefly when you set up and organised an event last year to do with your work, which is in and around menopause, which we will come on to and talk about. So we had a brief encounter and a conversation then when I came and had a stall at your networking thing. And then I've set up The Good, the Bad and the Vagina, and I've just reached out and you was like, yeah, I'd love to come on. And so here we are. We will talk about all sorts of things. I know you've got a birth I know nothing about. So that's something I'm really, really intrigued to know how that conversation's going to unfold. And I'd like to know a lot more about what you do and what you're offering in terms of the menopause, because you are known as the menopausal queen from the Southwest. So over to you, Claire. I'm going to let you tell the listeners who you are, what you're from, give us a brief introduction, and then we'll just let the conversation flow.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So, hi all, I'm Claire and I am the founder of the Atomic Wellness Company, which is now a CIC. I first created not CIC, I first created the Atomic Wellness Company a few years ago now. However, back when I first started it, it was a different name. It was called Move Over Menopause. And until actually probably a couple of days before I did the networking event, I was contacted by a lady saying that she was using the same name and that she had trademarked it, and I hadn't yet trademarked mine. So luckily for me, I hadn't done loads of things. I'd just kind of done the website, which is fine. It's, logos and things. To cut a long story short, I changed the name to the Atomic Wellness Company, and just sort of plodded on, trying to find my way through what I wanted to do in wellbeing. I became a licensed menopause advocate or mentor or champion. There's a few names that you can use. I started that and learned about that because I went into perimenopause myself at the age of 45. I'm now 49. That was during around lockdown, and I kind of had some symptoms and I thought, what's going on? What the hell's going on? And at that time, I had enough time on my hands to sit and read up and learn about what was actually going on with my body. I got so passionate about learning, I just thought, I'm going to get licensed, I'm going to train so that I can actually teach other people what they're possibly going to go through. Not everybody goes through the same thing because we're all different. But I just wanted it to be somewhere that people could come and discuss and ask for help when they needed it. Really enjoyed setting it up, becoming licensed. I loved learning, and I love learning now. I love learning every new aspect of well-being. I then decided to go into nutrition as well, because in menopause and perimenopause, nutrition is so important. So I thought, I'm going to do a diploma in mindful nutrition. And then it's kind of grown and grown. And now I changed the company into a CIC. I thought, why not do it? I like doing most of the things for free if I can. And then I thought, well, if I can get help from the National Lottery and see if they could fund me, then brilliant. So I applied for funding to do some nutrition and menopause events, and they funded me. So now I'm doing 2 events a month over the next 2 years within sort of the Torbay area. Other areas, if people sort of message me and say, "Oh, can you do it here, maybe in the South Hams or whatever, or Teignbridge?" But yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment, as well as working 4 days a week for an interior company. So I'm trying to squeeze everything in. I only do 4 days a week. I work as an interior designer for Nakuku, which is a local lifestyle store. So that's my story at the moment.
That's incredible. And I love the fact that you've really focused in and around nutrition, because for me, throughout my midwifery journey, that's always been my springboard. I've always said to women, midwives, we're not here to keep you well. We're here to monitor you, to see when things move away from normal. But ultimately, the person that keeps you healthy and well in your pregnancy is you. And that's by how you eat, what you drink, how you exercise, like the whole package. And I'm a firm believer in that. And I believe that even your mental well-being is affected by all of these things as well. And so if you can get really good foundations to sort of springboard off, it's so essential. So when you head into your menopause, we know that when we have babies, our bodies become relatively depleted because we give up our whole body to grow a whole human being. And by the time we have then worked through our life of mothering, we tend to invest food on the table. We feed our children first. We always are more mindful about what they put in their mouths, and we tend to graze and pick and eat the scraps that are left over. So by the time we're hitting into the menopause, we're relatively depleted. So it's really lovely to hear that that's something that you've really honed in on. I think it's really, really important. Have you found that's been a really an integral part of managing hormonal changes in the menopause?
Absolutely. Through my own experience and sort of going through the journey of perimenopause, which I'm still currently in, and sort of looking at myself, and I know this is the time in your life where you can actually think about your well-being. And your children may have grown up, you don't have as many responsibilities as you did back then when your children were young, although sometimes we then go into looking after elderly family or things like that. But it is a real time to sort of sit back and think, what am I doing to look after myself? What haven't I done? If you're mindful in everything, I think you do change your lifestyle quite drastically. I know I have, when it comes to food, especially. I sort of looked at photographs and thought, wow. And it really, really shocked me. So now I use that as a sort of a bit of a before and an after of changing my diet, and just sort of puffiness in general. And that was just simple things. And my logo on my business is called Small Changes, Big Impact, Atomic. So you're doing all these little things, and it's actually quite a big impact on the way you, not only the way you look, but how you feel mentally and physically. So yeah, through personal experience, I can definitely say nutrition is not only for your body, but also for those symptoms that if you don't want to take HRT, then really think about your diet and maybe what changes you can make with your diet. Or even if you are taking HRT, which I am myself, I'm having a change in my nutrition alongside my HRT. And for me, it's stopped my symptoms. I'm not perfect. I do get a bit of anxiety, which is what I suffered from before, every now and then, but it's not half as bad as it was. I really like to push that out to people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in many ways, I think I was sort of blessed on my menopausal journey. I'm not sure if you're aware, I've got three older children. So my eldest is 35, and then I've got a 33-year-old, and then a 31-year-old. And then I've got a gap, and I've got Honey and Rio. And Honey's 18 actually tomorrow, and Rio's 14. When I had Rio, I never had another period again because I was 45 when I had him. So I think that just trajectoried me through the menopause. I think I've had other symptoms like the emotional stuff, but I didn't really get a lot of the symptoms that a lot of women get, like hot flushes. But I do also and have also eaten a healthy diet predominantly through my life. But the biggest thing that I believe is sugar is the biggest culprit in so many things. For me, it's like the biggest drug on the planet. It's something that is so freely available, and people don't actually recognize or understand how impactful this sweet chocolate bar.
This manufactured piece of thing that they call sugar, which isn't, proper natural sugar cane. It's all manufactured and processed, and that and with unhealthy fats is like, oh, not
And
good.
have you learned an awful lot around that on your sort of learning journey that you've gone on about how impactful that has on the menopausal journey?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, how eating, for example, processed and ultra processed foods can, make your symptoms a lot worse. I mean, who needs something that makes your symptoms worse? We're trying to get rid of them, not encourage it. So it's trying to fill the gap and say, sort of, if you stop this, then it's going to help your symptoms, and that's what we all, really want in the long run.
I mean, I quite often say to pregnant women, we're quite habitual in quite a lot of our patterns.
Mm.
So we have the Sarconian rhythm pattern, which is where we're in sync with the life cycles of our patterns. But if we eat a Mars bar on Monday at 10 o'clock, on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, our body will go, we had a Mars bar at this time yesterday. Where's our daily Mars bar? And so it's about breaking those sort of small cycles in order for the bigger, longer term impact, which is, I love the name, by the way. I didn't realize how the name really connected with what you were trying to explain about it, but you explained it beautifully about how these little small changes have this huge impact. And that's why atomic well-being. I love it. It's so brilliant. Well done.
Thank you. It was quite a good thing, actually. The lady contacting me and saying, "I'm using that name." I was like, "Okay, fine," and yeah, I'm actually happier now with that. So yeah, it's just moving and progressing with everything, and it's looking into the menopausal side of eating well, um, but also for every individual as well. So I'm also training in children's nutrition, and I want to be able to, with the National Lottery funded events that I'm doing, I want to go to young teenage mums that don't know how to nourish themselves, let alone a baby. And I think it's a multi-generational thing. If you're born in a certain decade and ultra processed foods are the thing to eat, it's really hard to sort of bring you back. Actually, before, we used to cook all our food from scratch. We remember it because our parents, and even my age when I was younger, I remember having Frosties. That was in the early 80s, and there was quite a lot of processed foods when I was around. But previous to that, I would go to my grandma's and she'd always be home cooked everything. So it just goes to show how we've sort of gone downhill with our food habits, which is a
I was raised, I'm probably raised like homegrown everything. Our garden, we had a really long garden and it was full of vegetables. We
Mm.
had allotments. When it was our dinner time, can you go out and pick the beans? Can you go out and dig up the carrots? My granny had a farm in Ireland and we would spend lots of time, the whole summers, all our holidays over there. And we would be eating fresh eggs. We would be literally catching our meat to eat. You know, it was really, I think my foundations, they're really wholesome. And I've really tried to incorporate that with my kids. But I noticed the difference, how much harder it has been with the sort of the younger ones, because that the access to stuff is so much easier, is a word. Is it the right word? Convenient. It's just that that's what's there on offer a lot more.
I think the marketing side of things is the thing that is a nightmare for kids and teenagers this day, because they've only got to walk out of their school, look at a bus stop, and there's a billboard advertising KFC or McDonald's, but it's in their face all the time on the telly, the adverts. And I just think, why can't the adverts? And it's funny, I was sat talking to my husband the other evening, and I was like, why can't they just have an advert about farming and fresh food and things? And as I said it kind of came on. I thought, well, that's like your phones. You talk about something and you see adverts come up, but it's not very often you see really good, healthy adverts. I mean, they do try, but it's there's not a I know it's in talks with the government, but they're not really doing a great deal on stopping it like they did smoking.
It's all integrated though, isn't it? And to be fair, the smoking market just got replaced by a vaping market. And all their fingers are all really tied up in all of that. We need a healthy nation, but actually we want a sick nation because there's more money to be made in the sick. There's absolutely no money made in the healthy. Although that's changing slightly, and what they're doing is supplementing everything. So that's a whole huge market in itself. But actually, we need to be going to source and getting our wholesomeness from our source. I love the fact that you're incorporating now this whole range of considerations within your things. It started with the menopause, and that's a massive impact, but you're now saying that you want to work with younger people as well. The hormonal changes that take place on a woman's journey is astronomical, and it's never really considered or thought about. It's almost minimalized, but it's so impactful on our well-being. So when we go through our teenage years, our journey in those teenage years is so huge. And if we can get the right food sources at that, I think it would have a massive impact on how well we grow through our periods and when we start our periods. I mean, what girls are starting periods now as young as 9. I didn't start my periods till I was 16.
Wow.
And I'm sure that's because of the sort of the health that we kind of lived with at that stage. My older girls started their periods, which was considered a normal age range, about 13 or 14. But my youngest started her periods really young,
Wow.
like about 10. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. I was like,
It's about 11, I think, 11,
yeah.
12. I think starting secondary school. Wow.
And I just find the whole thing is quite overwhelming for some people.
Yeah.
It seems so like alien. But it's really good to hear that you're targeting that sort of age group. The hormone changes that come at that point, I always believe, are kind of quite reflective of, so we go through our teenage period, like growth. Then we go into our young woman where we kind of learn and understand our cycles. And then we have a baby. And that just sends everything into this astronomical, like, whirlwind. And then we then have another point where we're then going through our menopause. It blows my head away how we have all these massive changes, and yet it's not really brought out into the open and talked about in such an open and honest way. So
No.
I really love the stuff that you're doing. I think it's a really great thing. What would you be doing with the teenagers?
Talking about food, I think it would be giving them sort of facts about how nutrition is so important in your long-term health, and to learn how to nourish themselves so that they're fit and well to raise their child, but to also sort of start on the journey of, okay, so your child will need to start solids. I'm no expert at that. So what I'm learning at the moment is child nutrition and what children should be eating to grow strong and healthy. But what I would like to do is to then, if I've got young mums with babies, I would then like to get a expert speaker in, which would then say, right, okay, so your babies are going to be starting to think about, or you need to think about weaning your child. And it's going for, I want them to make their own food, feed themselves, and save some and freeze it for their baby, like I used to do. Our dinners were always frozen and put in a jar for my daughters, especially if we're going out for the day. They've still got good, decent food, rather than going and buying a jar from the supermarket. or those sachets, powdered foods that you mix up with water. It's just giving that, idea. And yeah, there was a couple of things that made me think, right, I need to do something about young mums, because I just, in my village, I remember walking round the block with my dog, and there was a really young girl sat on the bench with a really, really young baby, and she was feeding it like crisps, and the baby was almost of weaning age, and it was sucking on these crisps. And I just thought, I can't bear it. I need, them to realize it's not their fault, because they might not have been taught how to do that. So it's just bringing it in a nice, friendly, easy way for young women to learn to feed their children.
So I think throughout my career, talk a lot with women about conjuring up the image in your pregnancy that everything that you're eating, your baby's eating. Because when we become a mum, we're more likely to feed our child a healthier option than we are ourselves.
Yeah.
So if you can get into the habit of doing that during your pregnancy, that actually can change your diet quite considerably during your pregnancy and start laying down some really good foundations. And the other thing that I say to mums is you need to be eating a rainbow full of food a day so that you can then get the pot of gold at the end of it. And the reason behind the rainbow plate of food is because of the way that all the vitamins and minerals all need each other in order to make that pot of gold. So in order for your iron to be utilized within your diet, you need to have a better protein is your foundation from which everything else springboards from. So you need to have your green leafy stuff in there, but you also need your yellows and your oranges and reds in order for that green, the iron to come out of that green to be utilized properly. Because if we give a woman an iron tablet and there's no modification in her diet at all, the vitamin C that's probably been depleted in her diet, which is the reason why her iron levels have started dropping, is never rectified.
No.
And that's why that's why I talk an awful lot with pregnant mums about this, like rainbow plate. You have to look at your plate of food or your daily intake and think, have I eaten a rainbow colour of food today? And if I have, then I know that I'm going to be meeting all the needs that I need to meet for my baby.
That's amazing.
And it's a really simple message that I really try and get over and over and over a lot to mums, because it's so important. Because once you get that really great foundation in, it makes such a difference then to the health and the well-being of the rest of the pregnancy. Preeclampsia, for example, like raised blood pressure, a lot of that is poor diet based.
Wow.
When we eat, we produce byproducts of everything that we eat, as you know, and our bodies, our kidneys and liver will sort all that out, and then we wee and poo all of that stuff out. And that's a normal elimination process of byproducts. When we become pregnant, we do the same thing and we pass all the goodness over to our baby. And as always, for the rest of our life, kids will only ever give us the crap back. I don't want this, Mum. Half-eaten ice cream that's dribbling all down their arm. And that's okay whilst the baby's still quite small and if you're eating quite a healthy diet. But as your pregnancy grows and the baby gets bigger, then the byproducts that they're passing back to you are bigger. A healthy diet, your body can cope with that quite well. But if your diet's not that healthy, then the byproducts that you're producing and the baby's sending back to you are increased. And the byproducts are bind to protein. And that's how you then eliminate them out of your body, which is why one of the first signs of preeclampsia is protein in your urine, because that's your body really trying hard to get rid of the toxins. So if you increase your protein in your diet, actually it helps your body a lot, really does. But we don't, when women start getting these symptoms, we give them tablets rather than talk to them about their diet. And I find it really frustrating.
It is so true. And that's the same with menopause and HRT. When you've got a lady going to the doctors saying, I'm feeling really down, and they're of that age, I'm feeling really down. There's, nothing wrong with my life, but I just can't get this. And if that individual doesn't explain to the doctor any other symptoms that they might possibly have, that doctor, 9 times out of 10, will say, let's start you on some antidepressants. And they won't look into the actual, let's work out why you're feeling like this. What's your age? It's very much like that. It's not getting to the core, the root problem. And that is in some, most women's cases, it's not clinical depression, it's hormonal depression, which means HRT is going to help them. Don't get me wrong, if you are diagnosed with clinical depression previously to perimenopause and you're already taking antidepressants, then yes, HRT can work sometimes well. But for the first line treatment of somebody feeling anxious or low, it's HRT and your diet and lifestyle changes. So
It's
it's
really interesting. If you want to detox from sugar, if you cut sugar out of your diet but increase your protein, it stops the craving for sugar.
so almost like when you the slow releasing carbs makes you fuller for longer. So that's the kind of thing.
But it's an interesting thing because when you sugar based, like you're running with a high sugar level inside of you, you get hot flushes more, get night sweats more. You probably have a lot more anxiety because you're getting those peaks and troughs. And it's never, let's write down every piece of sugar that you eat in your day and you'd be surprised how many hidden sugars that you eat.
Absolutely. And again, this is down to the processed foods and the, the ultra processed foods. I did a blog today actually on my membership on my website. And so the people that have joined the membership get to access the blog. And the blog has lots of different things from lifestyle changes to nutrition and symptoms. And I did actually write a post today explaining that, oh gosh, I've got complete memory brain fog. I'm just completely lost.
That's menopause.
We were talking about sugar, weren't we?
Mm,
Yes. Sorry, I did a sort of picture of foods that we think are actually healthy for us, but they're actually not. And it's like you said, sugars that are hidden in these certain foods that you think that's fine. Plain cereals, bran cereals. You look at it, you think it's brown, it's healthy for you, but you look at the box and it's got so many sugars in. And my mum stayed at the weekend and she, bless her, she listens to what I'm saying about nutrition and things, and she's very much okay for change. And she's gone on to do some things that I've recommended, which is amazing. Nobody's perfect, and we all can slip up here and there, and it's just guiding people. But she said, oh, what about these? And it's a really nice brand of organic granola, but actually, even though it says organic, if you look on the ingredients, it's got sugars in and not natural. It's just a nightmare actually when you're shopping. And what we're trying and what you're trying to teach people is, in pregnancy, be mindful of what you're putting in the mouth because it's feeding your baby.
mm.
It's the same throughout any individual's life, is just mainly being mindful. And I think the journey and learning how to be mindful in so many different areas, especially in menopause, is really, really important. And I think once you've got it, and once you know, and you kind of don't go back. Yeah, you might have slip ups along the way, but I think you really can train your brain to think, I'm not going to go into a shop and actually buy that because it's not nourishing me in any way.
Yeah, I say to the men when I do my antenatal classes, I always say, and I think men connect with this because I'm quite good at using analogies and visuals and that sort of thing. And I always say to the men, if you imagine that I gave you a Lamborghini when you were 16, and I said to you, this is your Lamborghini, this is the only car you are ever going to own for the rest of your life. And in 20, 30, 40 years, when it's a vintage Lamborghini, people will be paying you an absolute fortune just to look at it. they would keep it in the most pristine condition. They would put the best oil in it. They would put the best petrol in it. They would run it for the exact amount of time that they're supposed to run it for. They wouldn't wear it out at night, running it around the seafront, bibbing its horn, getting the backfire things that go on down at Meadford. Don't look at our bodies as a Lamborghini. And yet this is the only machine that we get given at the beginning of our birthing journey. So we're presented in this human cell, and we're pretty powerless in how we manage our bodies until we get through sort of our teenage years. Most of the time, up until then, our input is governed around whatever's going on in the household. But once we step out of that arena, we're able to take more control. And so that's why I kind of use sort of 16, 18 as an age. And that's the point where you can kind of, okay, this is my Lamborghini now. I've now got to look after it. And in order for me to look after it, I've got to put the right fuel in it, and I've got to polish it and clean it and treat it with love and kindness and respect, because I want it to last me a lifetime. Because I don't want to be walking in 2 years from now. I don't want to be walking everywhere when I'm 60 or whatever. I want to be able to get into my really great machine and it cruise me wherever I'm going.
Do you know what? It's such a funny analogy that you said that. Actually, I was reading something the other day in a book, and my favorite car is a Porsche. I love Porsche. And I was reading this, I can't think what it was in. It was in some kind of nutrition book. And they said, think of your car as a Porsche. You wouldn't put watered down, sandy liquid into the tank, would you? Because it's never going to run as well. And exactly what you're saying. And I just thought that's such a great way of thinking, especially if you're a car lover. Oh my God, I would never, ever put in the wrong, fuel in my car. It's such a great way of getting the message across.
Yeah, and that's kind of what really all I want to do, is to kind of get people to sort of think a little bit more internally, because we are so consumed by the external stuff. We've so been sucked into the machine, and we are all part of the machine, the cogs in the machine and all the rest of it. But each cog, it needs to be cared for in its own unique individuality. And that ultimately comes down to ourselves and what we have to do ourselves. And that's kind of my big driver for people, to say, look after yourself. This is your time. You get such a short period of time on this planet.
Mm.
Treat it with the love and the respect that you desire. And I think that's why I got connected into the birthing arena. For me, it was such an integral part on my journey. And I found that throughout my career, when I've met women, they've started their pregnancy journey at one point, and then through that process have been set off on a completely different trajectory of to where they thought they were going to go. I know that happened to me, probably with all 5 of my pregnancies. I started off on my journey thinking, oh, no, I'm pregnant. This isn't lovely, isn't it? And then 6 months after I'd had the baby, found myself in a completely different place than I thought I would have been the year before, when I found out I was pregnant. So did you find that, just to be able to bring in your pregnancy journey now, did you find that happened with you?
I was very young when I had my first. I was 21. And for me, it wasn't planned, but it was something that didn't kind of phase me. I think I've loved children and always thought I would definitely want to be a mum. So yes, that's what happened. So I never I don't know. I think because I was young, I didn't know what to expect. It was all sort of totally new. No, I'd never discussed about pregnancy or what happens or anything. So for me, it was like a bit of a rabbit in headlights kind of moment. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But I loved being pregnant, and I think I had expectations of it all going tickety boo and having a normal birth, because that's what you think of when you're young, and you just think of having birth naturally. You don't think about cesareans, and that's what I ended up having in the end with my first daughter. And that was 1997. She is 28 now, and she is actually expecting herself. She's due next month. But for me, I think the journey of pregnancy was lovely and amazing, and the birth was just a bit, what went on there then? What happened? Yeah, bit of a journey.
So in around like the late 90s, the cesarean section rate was potentially around 12%, I think.
Okay.
It stands at over 50% now nationally.
Wow.
So you entering into your pregnancy arena, birthing arena, of course you thought you were going to have a normal birth. I know I did. I mean, when I started my career, it might have been about 7%, between 7 and 12%. I was aware of it when I entered into the birthing arena as a midwife. But when I was having babies, I wasn't really particularly aware of it. I am now as a midwife. So when you started on your pregnancy, I'm not surprised you thought you were just going to go in and have a baby. Clearly, that didn't quite go according to that thought process. You had a healthy pregnancy.
Yeah, absolutely. Had a really healthy pregnancy. I had a really good, can't think of the name, not surgeon. Well, he then later on went to be my surgeon. Doctor at Torbay was really, really good. And sort of, I kind of went in, I was due on the 9th of November, and I was huge. I was ginormous. And I had her on the 15th. 6 days late, and then I don't know how long she would have gone. Looking back now, I wish I hadn't have been induced. I think I wish I just sort of sat and waited for it just to completely happen naturally. But that was sort of said, oh, you can be induced. And that was, well, I didn't know. And I just thought, well, yes, okay, I'll be induced because I'm 6 days late. You know, I'm huge. I'm incredibly uncomfortable. And I guess if you're offering me that, then that's fine. I now, think that I could have changed. Yeah, I wish, but who knows? In your whole journey, you never know what's going to happen, and what to do for the right thing. But nowadays, I think my daughter's got a birth plan, which I never did, and I think it's a lot. I don't know for sure, but it seems there's so much more information out there on what is really good for your baby in birth, and as you know, which I probably had no idea of. I was induced, and I remember being induced, and only a certain part of my waters broke. So then I had to have the rest ruptured. Is that right?
You're describing something which sounds like a hind water leak, where it's the same bag of waters. Well, they call it the fore waters and the hind waters, but it's the same bag of waters. And if a baby is well presenting in a pelvis, then there may be the head is here and this is the cervix. There may be a small collection of water that's collected there, but actually it's still the same whole bag of water.
Yeah.
Sometimes if the baby's not well presenting on the cervix, then the waters will leak. A hind water leak for me rings alarm bells in terms of your baby's not in a good position. So 75% of women's waters, when they break, will go into spontaneous labour themselves because they're kind of almost there and they're ready and their body's telling them we're nearly ready to go into labour. The waters don't necessarily break as a sign of labour, but they may break because labour's getting ready and because the baby's not in the best position. That's just the next thing that happens.
Yeah.
If the baby's in a good position and the labour starts normally, the waters ought to stay until the very end of the labour. That's ideal. So waters breaking early is quite a modern phenomenon because babies are not in really good positions.
Okay, so I remember being induced, waiting and waiting. Then I went and had a bath in the hospital. And then when I came out of the bath, I remember drying myself and thought, oh my gosh. And literally, yeah, my waters had broken. And that's when they said, oh, not all of it is come out. So yes, me being my young 21-year-old self was sort of okay. And I then still didn't go into labour. It just seemed to take forever. I went in, I think, 8 o'clock in the morning on the 14th, and then had her 3 o'clock on the 15th in the morning. And I remember having sat there, friends were visiting me, I had the TENS machine on, everything. And then finally went into labour. I was given pethidine. Is it
Yeah.
pethidine? Yeah, I was given pethidine, and nothing was moving, and she was stuck, and nothing was happening. So they then told me I would need a cesarean, emergency cesarean. So I had an epidural, and then all I remember is being laid down, wheeled into the room before you go into the theatre, and I remember saying, I feel sick, and I think with fright and everything that was happening, I was just being sick. And then they were sort of touching me, and I just said, I can feel you touching me. Please don't operate. I can feel it. So they put me to sleep, and I went under general anaesthetic. And do you know what? I'm really pleased they did, because she was so far stuck. When they pulled her out, I hemorrhaged quite a lot. I think I lost about 2 pints of blood, and it was a bit touch and go. According to my mum and dad and their father, they were sort of treading, walking up and down the corridors, sort of like this. Oh my God, what's happening? Because it went on for quite a while for them to stop the bleed and everything. It's funny because I don't remember everything very clearly, obviously, because I was, knocked out, and it was quite stressful beforehand. So I messaged my ex-husband and last night and said, can you remember anything that sort of stands out? And he said, the thing that really stands out is obviously what had happened, and you had hemorrhaged during the C-section. But he said, I remember she was brought up 45 minutes before she was even put onto me. And that always stuck in my mind, thinking, I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't think that should have happened. Obviously I was in recovery. I just feel that she should have been kept with me and not taken up, and everybody else cuddling her before she's had that with me. So for me, that's sort of stuck in my head. But of course, obviously, Dad, my mum, and her father was desperate to see. But for me, I've always thought, and I remember coming round and they said, do you know what you've had? And I remember thinking, how on earth am I meant to know what I've had when I've been put to sleep? For God's sake. And I just went, oh yeah, I've had a boy. I've had a boy. And they said, no, you've had a girl. And yeah, completely not with it at all. Blood transfusion. And yeah, 1997, to this day, I'm still not allowed to give blood, because that was the same time with the mad cow disease or something like that. I'm pretty certain I'm not a mad cow, but it's just mental time. Mental time, and her growth and everything. She's a perfect baby, apart from a little of a pointy, swollen head when she came out. But other than that, perfect. No issues at all. Very bad colic, which I think maybe was that to do with such a traumatic birth.
Well, there's a lot of evidence that's coming through that's sort of indicating feeding issues with babies that have had quite traumatic von-twos or forceps and things like that. I know a guy who I used to work with in Northampton. He's an osteopath. His name is Christoph, and he has the Walnut Tree Clinic. And I used to refer a lot of women to him, and he used to do craniopathy on babies that had feeding issues, because there's something like 47 free floating bones in the baby's head, and they're there for a reason, to enable the passage through the vagina. But if you get these great big, right, clamping spoons stuck on them, it misaligns them, and then that has a knock-on effect onto their feeding and can create colic, and if you can get the bones realigned and reshape their face, it has an effect to improving their feeding. So a lot of women who experience breastfeeding problems, although the big issue is around tongue tying, a lot of it is more craniopathy that they need.
Mm.
Babies that don't present well in the pelvis. Our modern living today causes a lot more babies to be what's known as a OP position. So the baby's back is around on mum's back. And then that causes a really long labour, and they end up taking a long rotation and then end up with forceps or cesarean sections. And again, that just has a massive impact onto babies' heads and end up with colicky babies. It sounds like your journey was significantly big and not kind of what you were expecting as a 21-year-old. You probably parked it, because I find that early 20s, you kind of go, too much, stick it in a box.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest, I think back now, and my recovery from the cesarean, and it was so close to Christmas, and I remember them saying, "Oh, you can't push a pram until," I think it was like the day after Boxing Day, and you can't lift this and can't do this. I probably did too much that I shouldn't have, lifted washing baskets, but you have a newborn baby, so you do those things. I survived, and she grew up to be unbelievably, she loves food, and even from a young age, actually, she used to eat raw broccoli and random good healthy food. But I think my recovery, I think when you're at a young age, you sort of you've almost fly through things and get over it quickly. Maybe everybody's different, aren't they? How they get over certain things. But for me, although it was traumatic, it wasn't traumatic enough for me not to go for a second one, which is what I did. And I had a second daughter. And due to having a blood transfusion, had to have scans with my second child every 2 weeks. I had to have at a certain stage of my pregnancy, I had to have scans every 2 weeks and blood tests every 2 weeks, because my antibody level was getting too high. I wanted to just keep an eye on it. So I used to have to go from Torbay to Bristol to get these scans done, which was, yeah, 3D scans at that time in 2000. This was kind of, wow, these 3D scans are amazing. But that was again sort of a bit, that birth coming into my second birth was, this isn't going to be a smooth running pregnancy, because at the end of it, obviously every 2 weeks was the scans and the blood tests. But I knew I was going to have a cesarean, because they said I can't have them through the normal birth canal. So that second cesarean was planned. I was awake, and it was a lot different. Livy was put onto me. Yeah, and it was a lot different, but I was brought forward 3 weeks with Olivia, because the antibody level was getting higher and higher, and they said there was more of a risk for both of us if they let it go. So I had Livy, my youngest. Georgia is my eldest. They won't mind me saying. And I had her 3 weeks early. So Olivia came out with a little bit of jaundice. And other than that, they're both very healthy. I would love to know what other options I could have gone for at the time. For me, I don't think I had any other options.
I think that when you have had quite a traumatic birth experience, and then your pregnancy, actually, interestingly, then becomes quite trauma relating. I wouldn't say it's traumatic, but there were like fears in and around it. To actually then have a cesarean section so that at least it couldn't end on a smoother note is probably a really good choice at that point. I don't think we get badges and accolades for vaginal births or cesarean sections. I don't think that one should be seen as a better thing over the other. I think the feeling associated with your birth choices is the thing that makes you heart sing with it. So if you feel like you're in control of your decision making and your choices, and you're heard and you're respected, if you still end up then with a a cesarean section, even though you're wanting to have it, say, a planned home birth, for example, but you end up with a cesarean section. If that journey along that you felt seen, heard, validated, and understood, it can be a really positive experience.
Yeah.
But I think there was a huge swing and change from the lotus of control moving away from the woman onto the medical establishment. I think there's a bit of a pullback from women now saying we want a bit more choice. We want to be able to say yes or no. It's causing some discord amongst some spaces and places, but there's a whole shift towards hearing and seeing women, because for me, that's what produces the safest element of care.
Mm.
If you hear the woman and you see the woman, it keeps you safe because she knows what's going on with her body. So if a woman looks at me and says, I need to go here, I'm going, come on, let's go. I wouldn't be one of these that go, no, no, keep going. You're nearly there. You've got this. It's not about that. It's about really hearing and seeing and understanding that woman. And I think that when you had your first birth, because of how young you were and the place and space you were at that time with how the establishment, the medical establishment was working, you do surrender over your power and control. So you go along on this journey thinking that they've got your best interests at heart. And I'm not saying they haven't. They try. They think
Yeah.
they're doing the right thing, but actually it's not really sometimes the right thing, because you're then left with this big void of what went on there. I have to
Yeah.
park that in order to move on. And I think given the antibodies that we're building from the blood transfusion, just so you know, if anybody has a blood transfusion, they can't give blood.
Ooh, well, I was told, oh no, it's because you had it in 1997, and that's when the bloods were recalled.
No. No, if you had a blood transfusion, because you can naturally produce antibodies because it's not your blood.
Why do we get given this? Where did that ever come from? It's not something I'm going to make up. Oh no, sorry, that's what I was told because I was used to give blood.
Mm.
So I just went as normal, and I said, oh, answered the thing. Oh no, sorry, you can't do that because the bloods were recorded in 97, and that's the last time.
I mean, they'll probably change it again because they move their goalposts around all the time according to what they need, don't they? What the
Yeah.
needs are. But it's interesting when you have limited knowledge, when they give you then a little bit of knowledge, how that impacts, and that's what you carry around with you forever.
Yes, totally. The wrong
How
information.
impactful that.
Very, very frustrating. But as a whole, I wouldn't change it for the world. And I think that for me, my first birthing experience didn't put me off. Hence, having my second child. Whether that's because I was young and braver, I really don't know. Although my experience was hard, I loved the experience. It's a weird one, isn't it? How can you love something that was a little bit traumatic and scary?
I think it shows and demonstrates the strength and courage and awesomeness that we are as women. I think that two cells that are naked to the human eye come together and they formulate in our body, and then we create a whole new organ
Mm.
and we grow a whole human being within our body, and then we give birth. And not only once we've given birth, we then continue to nurture and put that child's needs before our own in order for that love cycle to carry on. And I think that's pretty awesome. I think we're incredible women. And I think then when we go and we head into our, I don't want to use the word sacrifice because I don't think it's a sacrifice that we make. I think it's something that we do lovingly and willingly, and it's part of our, you know, our journey of whom and what we are in our sort of makeup. When we then hit our midlife and we come to that point where our hormones then change again, and we then suddenly start looking at us and where we are in our journey, I think we then look back and go, oh my gosh. And I sometimes wonder if when we're heading in the menopause, I don't know this to be true, but I wonder if when we're heading into the menopause, some of those birth experiences come out through that hormonal change again.
Do you know that really could be the reason maybe why some women don't suffer, some women do. You said that you feel your menopause journey, your perimenopausal journey has gone fine. And you didn't have a traumatic birthing experience?
Well, if you call birthing an 11-pound baby at home traumatic,
Oh my God, that just made my eyes water. My God.
mm, but it wasn't. It was a beautiful experience. It was absolutely incredible. I was 45. I bet he was very late, very overdue. But I just was in my own power, and I birthed this baby, and it was an incredible experience.
Amazing.
Me and my friend Marge is a midwife, and my friend Julia, she was the reason I became a midwife, because when I was pregnant with my second baby, I had ovarian cancer, and she supported me not having chemotherapy. Everybody else was calling me nuts, and she was the only one that said, "Do what feels right for you. You've got to follow what feels right." And that's why I became a midwife. I then had my third son at home, and she was there in attendance. And we've just shared this incredible birthing journey together. It is awesome, is the only way to describe it. And she was there for the birth of Rio. And yeah, it was, you look at that and you just think this is an incredible experience that we could have. And we're all sitting there. There was me, Marge, and Julia. We're all sitting there having a chat about this massive baby that's landed on the planet. And then all of a sudden I go, "Oh my God, the placenta." I completely forgot about the placenta. Like, hoik this placenta out, present it to them. It was a really, really positive experience. My births, some of them have been amazingly, you know, empowering, and some have had elements around them that perhaps weren't as what I would really want, but it's been interesting dissecting and understanding them on my sort of birthing journey in my midwifery career. But I do sometimes, I wonder if we can get this wholesome foundation with our children, and then they can go through their teenage years with this lovely balance of hormones into their womanhood, and then they go into their birthing journeys with this captivation of beautiful hormones and mental well-being, that when they then hit the menopausal stage, it's a little bit more cushioned.
Yeah. I think, what you said is, maybe if you've had a good birth, then maybe your menopause journey is going to be, well, for me, I had a bit of a dodgy start, and I've had a bit of a dodgy start with my perimenopause. So that sits with me. My sister, on the other hand, had three boys just like that. They flew out. And she had them later in life. I think she's got three boys. Her eldest, she is 54. Her eldest has just gone to uni, and her youngest is 13 or 14. So yeah, she had them later in life. And like you, no mention of menopause. What's that? She feels that she's not experienced anything. So that she's had a good birthing experience, and she's having a good menopause experience. We are unbelievably so different in many ways. It's sometimes frustrating for us that are going through perimenopause, and some people, I just love hearing different stories, and that's the whole part of the learning and supporting others, isn't it? And everybody's journey is completely different, and we all have a different story.
It's like a massive orchestration of stuff. Like, I don't think there's any one thing that can go, "Oh, that's it." The hormone balance, the mental well-being, the physical and the diet and the lifestyle, the emotional support, all of these things. It's like a massive orchestration, and there only needs to be one of the violin that's got a broken string, and you can hear that deadness that can have a huge impact then on how the rest of the song sounds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Women need to be hugely honoured for the journey of what goes on within their bodies. I think it's been minimalised quite a lot over the last sort of 100 years, probably more than that. But I mean, I haven't been alive 100 years, but certainly, certainly more so as the medical establishment got involved. I think the women were minimalised a lot more, and it's taken a long time for the the menopause to be coming out and being spoken in a really open, honest way. And women like you doing the work that you're doing is so needed, because there are so many women that will just sit and suffer in silence.
Or be told by their elder, we just got through it. And I hear that a lot from the older generation when they see me sort of with my poster saying menopause thing. Oh, I've been there, done that, got over it. And that makes people suddenly think, what am I moaning about?
But also, as well, they may have been through it and got on with it, but maybe their foundations of their diet was different to the foundations of what women are now going through and experiencing.
Yeah, exactly what I've said to women, and some older women have said, "Oh, we've been," and I've said, "Oh, you're incredibly lucky," because there are sort of the younger generation that are feeling it more. And you're so right in the lifestyle. Our lifestyle is completely different now than what it was when they were going through the menopause. And a lot of women did suffer back then, and they weren't as lucky as we are now, although we're not lucky in the way of our processed food diet, but we are lucky enough that we can start shouting about it, and it's not as much of a stigma as it was back then. But the same with you, the work that you're doing is amazing, and giving women an option of actually think about what you want in pregnancy and go with what you want. I think that's really important. And I'm learning this through my daughter who is expecting, and she's telling me things and I'm thinking, well, suddenly I'm a bit scared, but then I think, well, no, that's what you want, you go for it. And sometimes, like I said, I do wish I could have changed the way I thought, because I didn't have any thoughts about it because I had no knowledge. I wish I had more knowledge. And that's the younger generation now who are expecting. They do have a lot of help. They can go to you. There are places they can go if they're made aware, but it's getting the awareness out there.
Yeah. The service that's available is great, but I think it's a process of a journey that you go on. And in order to get the other things, women have to be able to look for it in other places. Like I always say, I do the fluffy stuff. I always did the fluffy stuff when I was in the system, but I got revered for it, you know. I mean, I can remember one manager saying to me once, "So you care too much?" And I was like, "I'm in a caring profession. How can I care too much? This is why I came into this job."
That's a bizarre thing. Absolutely bizarre. That's like being a vet and not caring about it. Just doesn't make sense. Does not make sense.
And it has become a bit more of a business. That distresses me, which is the reason it wasn't aligning with my core values, which is why I decided that I had to relinquish my pin. I had to retire from that aspect in order for me to be able to practice how I have practiced throughout my career, which is always being loving and kind and putting the woman in the center of anything. It's her birth journey, it's not mine. I'm just here to hold the space for her and honor her and hear her and love her and nurture her and encourage her and empower her.
Mhm.
That's what I did as a midwife throughout my career. And it just got so much harder and harder and harder, because it was like 20 minutes appointment. You can only do this, you can only do that. You can't offer them this, you can't be on call for your women. And we know that knowing your midwife, being there, having her there for you along on that journey, like I had, as I said, with Julia, for me on my birthing journey. Interestingly, my eldest daughter, when she had her last baby, it was Julia's last home birth that she attended. There was me and Julia in in the house where my kids were born. It was just an amazing moment. One of those moments that it's like swimming with the dolphins. It's something that only would ever happen in a lifetime of wonderment. I
Thing.
had this most honourable, privileged position with Julia, and we sat there at one point. Do you remember when I gave birth to Louis in this room? And she was like, it was incredible. And there was Amber giving birth to her little baby. Yeah, I was been so blessed and honoured with that sort of stuff. And that's what I believe is missing now within the birthing
And that's
arena.
what you want for for the women you're helping, which is
Yeah.
amazing. And I think you're proving that as well, because you're like me, a CIC. If we could do it for nothing, we would, give that knowledge to people. But life is life, and we have to do something. But at least being a community interest company, we can still give back to the community and not think, actually, I'm earning all these profits. I think community interest is the way a lot of companies are sort of going. I think there's so many good things about community interest companies, and I think they need to be made more aware of how much we're actually here to help.
It's difficult, isn't it, when the main arena is the big NHS machine,
Mm,
and yet it can't sustain doing the work that you offer.
mm,
It can't provide the service that the women deserve when they're heading into that journey of their menopause, or they need something more. Because, as you said, they'll go to their GP and the GP will go, take these antidepressants because they've ticked their box and they're on to the next person because they get their 10-minute appointment. And so what you do is so invaluable, because it's about educating and empowering women
mm,
to go, right, I can do this. I'm strong. I'm intelligent. I can make changes. I can empower myself and I can grow through this journey. And
mm.
that's what I believe you give women. And I think that's what I work with. When I meet a pregnant woman, that's what I'm saying. You've got this. You
Yeah,
can absolutely do this. You're an amazing human. You're about to grow a whole human being. Get those foundations right, and it will sustain you and them for so much of their life.
definitely.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
think it's incredible.
Aren't we doing an amazing job?
We certainly are. And how often do we say to ourselves, I'm doing an amazing job? I think women never say really beautiful, loving things to themselves often enough.
Because we're especially going through menopause and perimenopause, we're full of doubt. We always doubt ourselves. And I think one thing is know your worth, and really remember, know your worth. There's so many people that really need to know their worth, from self-employed people that are going out doing building work. I don't know how much to charge somebody for doing it. Well, know your worth. What value are you bringing to that? It's the same with anything. I think we all need to know how good we are at certain things, and that's not boasting, and that's not being big-headed. That is just, it's just how it is. And I
Mm,
think as we get older, I think I don't know about anybody else, but I love learning. I love reading. I do like reading stupid books that make me laugh, but I do love reading books that are teaching me something, so that then I can go and say to somebody, this is going to help you. It's just, I think it's in your blood, isn't it, that you want to bring out the best in people.
yeah. And I think as well, when you hit that midlife point in, you've given so much of yourself to your family and to your children. It's a bit like I say, you know who you are as a woman. That first journey into motherhood is filled with an unknown, because you have no idea who that woman is going to be once she steps into that arena of being a mother.
Mm,
And I think then when you hit that hormonal stage again, at, when you're heading into the menopause, you know who you are as a mum, but all your little birds have flown the nest. And there's this like, now what? Now who am I going to be? But actually, it's like you're going to be phenomenal, is what you're going to be.
yeah, and again, yeah, that's self-belief and having no self-doubt.
And that's what you bring. And I really want to get onto one of your workshops. I think it'd be really good. But I'd really also like to bring you in when I'm working with families with their mums, because I
Mm,
think that would be a really good point for, I think we need our village back.
yeah. Totally, totally. And I think the more people that work together in different concepts, and it just helps even more. Workshops I do, I call people in and say, you're more of a professional, you know what you're talking about, come and talk. And I think that's great that we can all work together. Some things overlap. I mean, I did a nutrition event on Saturday, and I was talking about nutrition and perimenopause and menopause. And I had a guest speaker who is a nutritionist who was also talking about the same thing, but we focused on different things. I focused on, actually, you guys have got to stop eating your ultra processed foods because this is what happens to your hormones. And the guest speaker, she came in with a different angle. And I think even though you're doing the same things, you can really work well together.
You're affirming each other, aren't you? You're affirming each other's work. And I think the work that I do in pregnancy and around diet and lifestyle is affirming the foundations that you need for the menopause.
Yeah.
And if you've got a woman like yourself who's going to become a nanny, how exciting. It's a really interesting point for you to be able to kind of support your daughter and go,
Yeah.
actually, you're having a pregnancy, your baby will be depleting some of your body. This is the point now where you need to adopt what I'm doing, really concentrate in that, and I can help and support you doing that, and then get that family village thing back again.
Yeah, absolutely. Nourishing, making sure she's going to nourish herself. Exciting. Exciting times.
Keep me updated, won't you? And when she's had the baby, if you want to come on and tell us the story,
Yes.
you'd allow it, it'd be amazing.
Yeah. And it would be great to bring her on as well
Yeah.
and talk. That would be fab.
Yeah. And if she needs any support, if she wants some little support and whatever on this latter part of her journey, you know where I am. Just pick up the phone and give me a ring.
Definitely.
I'm always here to help.
Bless you. Well, I'm going to have a chat with her tomorrow and let her know what we've talked about. And yeah, for sure, she's all in for just doing it her way, which I'm so proud. So proud.
Sometimes you just need that voice in the background, just going, it's okay. I hear you. I see you. You've got this. Are you going to be at the birth? My gosh, it is phenomenal. Having been there and being the midwife with my granddaughters. I mean, I have to say I have been honoured and pleasured to do that.
Yeah.
It's not a kind of a known thing that a lot of midwives have done. Quite often the system itself will put the kiboshes on, but obviously the community and the village of midwives that I had around me, we were all really loving and respectful. And I knew if ever there was a point where I was uncomfortable with it or they were uncomfortable, we would have just said, I need to step back and it's time for somebody else to step in. But I just knew my girls were bloody great birthing machines. They were all powerhouses. Yeah. Yeah, they were.
Yes.
They're absolute delight. I've loved. It's interesting because although you were at the menopausal, isn't it interesting how intricate our conversations have been and how much they reflect each other and
they just entwine, and it's a different journey, but it's not a different journey. Yeah, it's a good story all round.
So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for being so open and honest about your birthing journey, because it does bring up some stuff where you go, oh, actually, I haven't thought about that for a long time, but it's there. But yeah, incredible. And for me, it just reflects the strength that as a woman that you were able to powerhouse through all of that and birth your babies and nurture them and look after them so that they grew into these phenomenal women that you've got around you now. Hats off to you for doing that. Well done.
Thank you very much, and likewise.
Yeah, no, what a pleasure. 2 of them are boys. Not so good with them.
Yes, I bet you are.
Yeah, beautiful. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much, Claire. I really, really appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to the listeners hearing all of this.
Thank you, and have an amazing Christmas.
Well, I'll try. Thank you. You too, won't you?
Thank you, I will.